Coming up next is Quaker Focus, only on Plains FM 96.9.
Welcome to the last talk on the Quaker testimonies. Equality, possibly one of the most important but also the most complex. How do we treat people as equals when we live in such a world of inequality? In terms of Quaker worship, there is nothing more equal than sitting in silence, open for anyone to speak. For Quakers, each person has value and dignity and is precious to God. On this basis, Quakers work for equality in all areas of social, cultural, legal, and economic life. It's lovely to have Yusra, John, and Pat with us today. My name is Rosemary, and I'm in the chair as Michael Winter is unable to be here. Firstly, Yusra, you are an Iraqi and a Muslim living in New Zealand for many years. What is it about the Quaker concern for equality that enables you to worship with us as a Muslim?
Hi, Rosemary. Yes, I thought about it for a while, and then I came to this thought, which I hope it will explain. For me, it's like you have an ideology and a practice. As an ideology, I am a practicing Muslim. But I find a lot, if not all, what the Quaker calls for sink in with what I believe. For example, this matter of equality. I find, as I said, what I believe is quite in sync with Quakerism. The idea of being equal is quite an aim or a target to go for, and that's what we try to practice here. Not only being equal among the practicing Quakers, but also looking at the people outside our close circle as equal to us. Some people think or believe or have the impression that there is no hierarchy in Quakerism, but there is hierarchy. There is a local, national, and international hierarchy in Quakerism. The difference is it's not personal hierarchy. It's functional hierarchy. So for example, I can, me, Yusra, be nominated to be a member of some functioning group in Quakerism. And I'll go and do my function, and during that time and afterwards, I'll be the same. Nothing. No, I won't have a crown or a hammer or anything. I will be always Yusra. I'll do a function, I'll finish it, and come back. That's the way I look at it.
Thank you. John, you have worked in the area of mental health, an area which has possible shades of perceived inequality. How does the testimony of equality affect you?
In a number of ways, Rosemary, because it applies both at a personal level for me in my dealings with others, and it applies in my work where the work is to attempt to change systems so that the systems deal more equitably with those who are disempowered relative to it. At a personal level, the crucial thing for me is that the Quaker notion that there is that of God in every person, that everyone has some sort of divine spark. And in my work within mental health, within past work as a probation officer, I've always seen my role as being to identify, to find that spark, and then to help people to grow, both in ways that they will find personally fulfilling, but also in ways which bring them back into more socially acceptable modes of acting, modes of being. And equality is the basis for that. At an organisational or a systems level, I work personally to try to make systems better for people within mental health. In the past, and still these days, Quakers have had a long history of working to change systems that they saw as being unfair. The history of Quaker opposition to slavery is a very good example of that. Early Quakers had slaves, but over time they came to an awareness that that was not something that was respectful. It was something which was not in accord with the will of God as they perceived it. And so they, I forget the word, is it manumission? They're giving the freedom to the slaves that they had, and then a lot of political activity over many, many years to change the laws around slavery, both within England and in America. There are numerous other examples as well. Margaret Fell's work on prison reform, which continues to this day, would be another very good example of that. Notion of equality of individuals driving Quaker activity for change.
Thank you. Pat, you have been a librarian, and you have been concerned in that role to enable people to have equal access to information, and a very important part of equality. Would you like to tell us some more?
Yes, my job has enabled me to express my values on this testimony, because libraries are places where they are enablers, social enablers of society. But on a personal level, it's that, as John says, that of God in every person. One of the early things that really appealed to me about Quakers was it was every person, not every man. And very early testimony of Quakers was the equality of women, and that was really important to me. But on a personal basis, seeing that of God in everybody. In the public library, you're getting a cross-section of people, every age, social class, level of ability, ethnicity. So you get to practice on a daily basis, dozens of times a day, seeing that of God in everybody. And if you can't treat people equally on a personal level, then you're failing on an institutional level as well, I think.
Thank you. So we've looked at the various areas of equality. Is there anything anybody would like to add to this? And what the listeners couldn't see was the grins on the faces of the participants here when you said that equality for women was very important. So is there anything anybody would like to add to this?
Sorry.
Yusra.
It might be nothing related to anything, but I always remember from my heritage or culture. I speak Arabic, and one of the sayings which has a special resonance in me is this. I'll say it in Arabic, then I'll translate. الأم مدرسة إذا أعددتها أعددت شعبا طيب الأعراق, which translate to the mother is like a school. If you prepared her well, you have prepared a well stable and balanced nation. So talking about equality and women, mothers are women. And if you are treating them well, or if they are well treated in a society, the next generation is prepared by and brought up by those mothers. And you will be in good hands when you are retired and in a rest home.
Thank you. Thank you.
It appeals to me that, because I have a background in comparative religion as a study, that Quakers are open to inspiration from all faiths. And there's an equality in that too, that you can find inspiration wherever it comes to you.
So the task of people within a Quaker meeting are to respect the differences and to respect the wisdom of each human being, although at times we may disagree with it profoundly.
Sometimes.
Yes. Yes. John, do you want to add more?
I think one of the things that's important is to recognise that Quakers are human beings, and we carry with us all the cultural baggage that comes from our past heritage. But we also have within us the tension between how we would like to be, the ideal of Quakers, because there's a Quaker saying about that Quakerism starts when we leave the meeting, because we're called to continue the nurture, the sustenance, the challenges that we face within meeting, and to take that and go out and use it day to day in our relationships with all other people. And the tension between that, the theory or the ideal, and the practice of ourselves as human beings is something that I'm sure many of our listeners will be able to identify with.
So it really is a very complex journey. And what you're suggesting is that we also need to look at each one of ourselves and find out what our unconscious, sometimes, biases are. And it's interesting to me how long it takes to change behaviour. And you mentioned how long it takes to change institutional thinking. And we have instances of that in society today. But there is something very powerful about not having the hierarchy of worship, that everybody is perceived to be equal. And this, to me, is really important. Whatever functioning roles I have, that helps the society keep going, but basically it's what is my relationship to God and other people.
It's empowering as an individual. Equality works both ways. It's not just that everyone's equal to you, but you are equal to everyone else as well. And that means that God might speak through you as well. Maybe.
When I'm sitting in meeting, I have an elderly friend who's now died, but she sits on my shoulder saying, "Now, Rosemary, are you speaking from the wisdom of the meeting, or are you speaking from Rosemary?" If it's Rosemary in the meeting, it's less valuable.
It can be hard to tell sometimes.
Yes, it can be very hard to tell. But there is something very important about the concept of equality, and thank you. We are equal as well as other people. Yes.
I would like to add one extra thing about equality for people who are not Quakers. Like when we have a decision making among ourselves. It might take some time until we come to the final decision, because everybody must agree and raise their worries or opposition before that decision is made. Rosemary, can you add to that?
There are moments when I have thought that it would be much easier to have a pope. Because you're right, and the need for everybody to have a part in the decision is really important. But there is also another part of that, which is that as a member of this decision-making body, I am there to listen to what everybody wants. I'm not just there to push my own views. And that's another part of the complexity of equality.
Yes, you're talking about that notion that every person's opinion, sincerely held, in which they believe comes from the divine, however you conceive that, is of equal value in meeting, whether that's given as testimony or as worship, or whether that's in a meeting for business, the full name for which is Meeting for Worship for Business, and helping people to form a decision that everyone is comfortable with.
And also, how do we value each person so that people, your comment, Pat, but how do we value people so that they feel they do have the possibility of being taken seriously and being valued in whatever they say? And that seems to me an important part of the process of making the testimony of equality actually viable in the society. And I think that's a challenge for us at times.
It's a challenge. We don't always meet within the meeting, and then we've got to take it outside the meeting as well, which is even more of a challenge. Yeah, challenges are good for you.
Yes, they are. Are there parts of society or institutions that you would personally like to see changed at the moment? Just as I won't hold you to it, but
Definitely, I think in our society we've structured things in so many realms that there are the haves and the have-nots, whether that's in terms of power or in wealth or the ability to make decisions for themselves. I'm thinking particularly of mental health, where we have taken to ourselves the ability to say, this person is not able to make their own decisions, we will make decisions for them. And in that way we completely strip away any power that might have, that they may have. We've created and legislated for that imbalance in power, which then allows us to compulsorily treat people for what we consider to be a mental illness. And part of my work in mental illness is around trying to change structures and systems to allow those with the power to recognise that imbalance and to try to redress it wherever possible by involving the other person in the conversations.
that's interesting because I too have a mental health background, and I remember people wanting to be taken seriously in their illness, and that being really important. And yes, for a moment they wanted their rights taken away in order for them to feel safe. And it really is my other concern for mental health today exist in New Zealand is that there be enough personnel available to do the job well. So that would be one of mine. Pat, do you have a real concern at the moment?
I would be concerned for equalities in the justice system where, disproportionate numbers of the prison population are Maori. What's going on there? Someone is being treated unequally. I'm sure we could do something about that if we tried hard enough.
Thank you. Yusra?
I always have this notion about the children. Just an idea. Is like I always think that children don't lack intelligence. What they lack is experience and vocabulary. And taking children seriously in the justice system, at schools, again, it comes down to cost. Because if we want to do that, we have to have the right employees or the expert people to deal with them.
Thank you very much. We need to wind up.
Okay.
And we hope that the listeners have found something in the complexity of this. And if they want to learn more, they will try the website or come to meeting at 10:30 on Sunday. Thank you all very much.
And the address is?
217 Ferry Road. Thank you, Yusra.